welcome to my channel. My name is Jane and I like giving you guys tips on how you can succeed in school. I also like to do fitness and lifestyle videos, so if you are into that, don't forget to subscribe down below and give my video a big thumbs up to show that you like it. So this video is probably long overdue and I didn't want to film anything in case I didn't get a 4.0 in my second semester of psychology. I've been waiting for my grades to come out and they finally did, so I'm here to share my tips and tricks with you guys. This mainly applies to online school, but I feel like we're gonna be back in person for school in the fall. You can also use them for in-person classes to help you achieve that 4.0. During my first year at McGill University, I was a biology major. I wasn't getting super great grades. I don't know if that's because it was in person or if I just wasn't liking the material or because it was like my first semester ever at uni. When I switched to psychology, I became a psych major during my second year. My grades shot up so fast. It could be because it was all online. It could also be because I really enjoyed the material. At the same time, just keep in mind that because everything was online and we had like all the material in front of us, the professors did make the exams harder. A lot of them went from multiple choice exams that they used to do in person to like long answer exams, which really requires you to understand the material. So I'm going to be sharing with you guys 7 tips that I followed during my second year of uni. The number one tip that I have for you guys, I can't say that this applies to everyone, but this was what really helped me focus on my studies. So my first tip would be to not watch TV or read any books if you're into that. Like, I still watch TV, but I would watch, you know, those like comedy shows that don't have a plot, that don't require engagement. You could like literally watch any episode in any season and you wouldn't be lost. How I Met Your Mother, Friends, Brooklyn Nine-Nine if you guys are not from the US. I'm a really big bookworm, so when I start a book, I get so into it. It's like the same thing with shows. I binge my shows. So I like took all of that away. I used to keep track of like 26 shows at a time. I remember I used to not study for exams because I was so into a show. I'm not saying don't do any activity that you enjoy doing during the school period because that's a really long time. Definitely go work out, definitely go do sports, definitely do things that are productive. Just stop watching engaging and addicting shows if you're like me and you can't stop watching after one single episode. It was boring, I'll admit, but I did improve my grades a lot, so I think it was definitely worth it. I know it's asking for a lot, like you're giving up one of your biggest enjoyments in life. You have to make sacrifices. If you want to, for example, get fit, you're gonna have to give up on some junk foods or foods that you enjoy. Giving up on shows is kind of like the same thing as giving up on junk food.
Hi, I just want to clarify something. You don't have to give up on junk food to live a healthy life. You just have to eat it in moderation. But my point was just that if you're addicted to shows and you can't stop watching after one episode, then you can't really watch it in moderation. So I guess that's not really a good comparison, but best way would just be to cut it out for 3 months.
Try it for like a month. If you don't like it, then just stop. The rest of my tips are not as extreme as that. You don't have to go through like a whole lifestyle change. The second tip that I have is to not attend class if it's not recorded and if attendance isn't mandatory. I don't see the point in attending Zoom and listening to the professor talk, take a couple notes, just to have to re-watch the lecture recording later and complete your notes. You're kind of watching the lecture twice, which I find wastes a lot of time. For in-person courses, I would definitely go to class just because I kind of like the vibe of sitting next to other people, taking notes, listening to the professor speak. Even just traveling downtown to campus is a really nice sight. Like, McGill has such a nice campus and there are so many places to study. So if it's in person, I definitely encourage you to go to class because it's less depressing and there are like people that you can meet. There's cafes you can study at, the library, there's a nice campus. There's just so many more benefits of going to class if it's in person versus if it's online. So what I like to do is I like to just not attend class. I'll use that time to study for another class or catch up on whatever I'm behind in. Towards the end of the day, once the recording is uploaded, I'll watch it and I'll take notes. It just works out so perfectly because I can pause when I need to and I can rewind, I can speed it up so it saves a lot of time, versus if I'm sitting there in like Zoom, the teacher would move on to another subject and I'm not even done writing notes yet. The third tip that I have is obviously to not spend time studying too much or memorizing the material. This only applies to open book exams. I know some online courses are proctored. For those, definitely study and definitely do your memorizing. Basically what I would do, like my studying process would be to watch the lecture recordings and then I would take notes as I go. This is what my notes look like, and I do spend a lot of time taking notes. And then for the exam, I would like never really study. I would just do little mind maps of what I had taken notes of, and so this really helped me make my notes more concise and just to look at the key points that I needed. The fourth thing I want to talk about is handwriting your notes versus typing them. I know a lot of people in uni tend to type their notes because it's faster and it's easier. So obviously, like everyone knows that if you handwrite your notes, you retain more information, you process more deeply, and you have a deeper understanding of the material. But then on the other side, if you type your notes, you get them over with faster, so then you have more time to study. They kind of have pros and cons, but I really prefer handwriting my notes, and I will tell you why. I would always make sure that I have notes for each lecture, but I wouldn't always have time to study them. Even when I wasn't able to finish studying, I would still end up with high 90s on my exams, and I am pretty sure that is because I handwrite all of my notes. I can tell you it is not because I am smart, because I didn't do well during my first semester in biology.
I just want to clarify that I did type most of my notes when I was a biology major.
So it has nothing to do with intelligence. I really think it's because I was able to understand the material more because I had written all the information down. I was literally just transcribing word for word what the professor was saying. Whereas when I was handwriting it, I would listen to the professor explain the whole entire slide first before jotting down my notes. I was able to really put the information in my own words. I was able to make it more concise, explain it in a way that makes sense to me. My notes are only like 6 pages per lecture. I know people who have like 15 pages of typed notes for one lecture. Like imagine having to study that. I can't do that. Even the 6 pages is like too much for me, which is why I like mind maps. Tip, even if you don't have to do every single exam that the class has, I would strongly recommend doing it. I know it seems like a waste of time, but trust me, in the long run, I'm pretty sure you're gonna thank me for it. I had 2 classes that had 2 midterms each, and we only had to do 1 midterm. I ended up doing both midterms for both classes because I knew that if I didn't do the second midterm, I wouldn't have made notes for it and I wouldn't have watched the lecture recordings for it. So essentially I wouldn't have studied any of the material until the final. That would have really stressed me out. So I would suggest do the exam just so that you can get the material over with and have the notes for it so that you don't have to cram everything for the final. I don't know if like you guys have flexible grading in your classes. For one of my classes, a lot of people did well on the first midterm, myself included. They decided to skip the second one because only one of the midterms counted. I decided to do the second midterm anyway. In the second midterm, I did worse than in the first one. But then he decided to remove a couple questions, so I went from getting like an 87 to a 95 on my second midterm, which was better than how I did on the first one. It just serves as practice. It helps you have your notes ready for the final. It can boost your grade if you have flexible grading. The 6th tip tip I have is to give yourself less time to do a task. Kind of has to do with Parkinson's law, which said the more time you give yourself to do something, the more time it'll take to do that thing. When I found myself with a week to study for an exam, I would not do it. I would study like one lecture a day and then just be done with it because I knew that I had so much time and I didn't have to rush. But then in the end, I still had to rush because I procrastinated and then I left everything to the end. I just didn't have a lot of time to study for my exams because I was never caught up with material, so I was always one step behind and I was always trying to catch up in time for exams. I could never keep up with all 5 classes at once. I would only be caught up for the classes that I recently had midterms for. It was just a very, very bad system. Basically, I never really had a lot of time to study for my exams. I only had like a day or 2. I did work better under time pressure because it took me a lot less time to do things. If realistically it can take you only 2 days, don't give yourself a week to do it. Just give yourself 2 days, and that way you can not waste time and work on something else. The 7th tip that I have is to spread out your studying time. This isn't really one of my tips. In my, I don't know, like last 15 years of living, I have never been able to do this successfully, so I can't even say that it contributed to my 4.0, but this is genuinely really helpful. So instead of cramming everything for the last minute, like 2 days before the exam, you should ideally be studying 4 lectures per day for 5 days instead of 10 lectures per day for 2 days. This has to do with like, I'm forgetting what it's called. It's not Ebbinghouse's forgetting curve. Oh, spaced repetition. That's what it's called, spaced repetition. So it has to do with Ebbinghouse's forgetting curve, but I'll put a chart up here. Basically, if you review your first lecture, I don't know, on day 1, you're gonna forget it by like day 5. You need to be reviewing your lectures repetitively over a number of days. This obviously never worked for me because I would always like kind of cram my studying. I would always have 2-3 days to study for exams, so this never applied to me, and I don't think I had a forgetting curve because there was not enough time between how many days I had left to study and the exam to actually forget information. Spaced repetition is really helpful, and this is especially for in-person classes. If you have to memorize anything, you definitely should space out your repetition so that you can memorize the information better and have a smaller chance of forgetting that information. The 8th tip would be, okay, this is not necessary, like I'm not trying to flex that I have Notability and that I have an iPad, but I find having Notability and an iPad really help me. Notability lets you command find your handwritten notes. Like, how cool is that? It can command find words that you wrote with your handwriting in a document. I find that like that's amazing. Also, you can search for like a key term across every single note that you have in Notability, for all your lectures, for all your notes, for every class. So I find that to be really helpful for exams because it saves you a lot of time. And this only applies to online school. You obviously can't do that for exams during in-person, but if you don't have Notability, you can definitely do this with just regular PDFs. So I know on the Mac, like with Preview, you can compile multiple PowerPoints into one document so that you can command find through all of your lectures throughout the semester. I find that really, really helpful. Even if you don't type your notes and you can't command find your notes, if you at least know which lecture the information you're looking for comes from, then you can go into that lecture's notes that you took, like on paper, for example, and then you can read your notes on that. So this is something that I really, really recommend doing for online school. It saves a lot of time during exams, and I know exams can be stressful. These are the things that I did differently from my first year at McGill. Once I start doing like class in person, then I can come out with some more helpful tips, but I haven't done in person yet and gotten a 4.0 GPA, so I can't really give you guys tips on how to do that because I haven't even done it yet. Let me know what you guys want me to make videos on regarding McGill University, regarding university, psychology, biology, studying, anything school related. I know you guys love these videos the most, so let me know what you guys want to see next and I will get on that. Good luck to everyone who is taking a summer class, and and anyone who's in school right now. If you did like the video, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next video. Bye!